what do you want to do? Ask yourself, what do you want to do? What are you afraid of trying? Like, what's so curious about life that you really like are afraid to tell anybody about, but you know you actually want to do it? Write down on a piece of paper. Just start small. Like, get it out of your mind. Get it out of the rumination. Like, put it physically somewhere, and then burn the paper if you want to. Do whatever you need to do, but get your ideas, your curiosities, your deep thoughts out into the world in some way, and that they'll start to manifest themselves.
The things in my life that I've been most afraid of are the things that are typically the things that I want the most, that I'm eager or curious about the most, the things that draw me near. They're the things that I know deep down are going to turn my life into something new in some way. It's going to make me change shape. And there's something that can be discomforting about that in the moment. I think it's the anticipation of it. But in every moment that I've faced my fears, I have turned into somebody that I love. And my life has become that much more vibrant and rich. And I was able to look back and see that I did this thing that I was scared of doing. And I like who I am because I did that. And I feel like I'm living a more authentic life because I did that.
Don't lay in a weird position in the bathroom and figure it out. You'll feel better.
So, but anyway, how are you doing today?
Afternoon, Gregory. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing great. I never know what to say to you because it's morning here and it's afternoon there, but one day will be.
I always say one time. Yeah, I don't know. Either one is fine. It's sometime somewhere, as they say.
Yes, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, as my parents say. Sometimes. Goodness. Well, hey, I'm really excited to chat today, and I thought deeply about a lot of things from our last episode. And if people haven't heard that, definitely check it out. I think it's a really great one. But we talked about a lot of like New Year's resolutions and stuff like that. And you brought up a concept of fear. And yes, fear. Maybe this should have came out on Halloween. Kind of regretting not timing this up a little bit better. But I think it helps in regards to New Year's as well, because New Year's resolutions and all of those ideologies are typically around concepts of doing things that you haven't done before, which could be a really scary thing. And so I wanted to dive deeper into fear in today's discussion, because I went back to my journals after you talked about sharing your fears, and I really started thinking a bit deeper about what I'm afraid of. And anyway, I just felt really motivated to share that process, and hopefully bring some benefit of it, to people around fear as a concept and how we can conquer those and why we should and all the in-betweens. So
yes,
where do we think it makes sense to start? Maybe just what is fear? And that could be a good one, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I decided I'm going to be quote unquote irreverent in this episode because I'm going to conquer fears. So first of all, guess where I am right now?
I think you're in a shower or something.
Yeah, I'm in the bathroom. You don't record podcasts.
You're afraid of bathrooms?
No, I'm afraid. I was just always conscious that I should record a podcast. Maybe FaceTime is even a little bit limited. How often should you be in the bathroom doing things? Well, I love being in the bathroom, and I'm always in here. And that there was just some laundry rolling around in the dryer, and it's the perfect temperature. I got the smells. I got the nice tile in the background. I put some lights in here. There's a studio in my bathroom right now. I just put stuff all over it. Only you could see it. So, step one.
I love this.
Take on the fears. Oh, no, we cut out for a second.
I know, you cut out too.
Okay, we're back. We're back.
Yeah, we're back. And better than ever. So, thank you for sharing this. I love that you decided to go into the bathroom. Mm-hmm. What exactly are you tackling right now? What's the main fear here?
The cultural judgment. And also, I'm wearing a tank top. I came from the gym. I just decided I'm gonna roll in in my casual attire and I'm going to do the podcast in the bathroom because yes, and we're going to get a thumbs up about it and some fireworks.
And some fireworks. Doesn't it feel good? Doesn't it feel good to conquer fears?
Yes. Anybody who's only listening, like we're getting the reactions when you put the thumbs up on FaceTime, it gives you fireworks and all kinds of stuff.
They come in at the best moments.
Yes. It feels great to conquer the fears. I feel really cozy in here. This is the definition of casual joy, if such a thing exists.
Casual joy.
Yeah.
I really like that. Cozy isn't a word I describe in a hard-walled bathroom. So it's interesting that you feel that way. That's great, though.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I haven't watched many cartoons in the bathroom, just chilling in a weird position, laying in a strange shape.
Did you do this growing up?
Yeah, also growing up. It's just like a comforting place. I know a lot of men feel the same way. They feel that they just chill out in the bathroom and that's like the safe space. That's where they get away from life. And I don't know why, but it's the only place a lot of men feel like they can get away from life. Nobody can come in and bother them. The door's locked. Forget about it. I got no obligations in the bathroom. I just do what I want.
I totally get it from like, if I'm taking a hot shower or something like that, but you take cold showers, you must be terrified of going into those things.
Touche, Gregory. But in the middle of winter, sometimes I start with a warm shower and then I take the cold shower at the end. End cold. As long as I end cold, it counts.
Right.
Sometimes I can't force myself.
See, I can meet you there. That's something I can get on board with. That's great. This is maybe a really harsh segue, but you know what's in bathrooms typically?
What's that?
Mirrors. There are mirrors in bathrooms.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about how fear is a mirror. It's a reflection of the parts of yourself that have some growing to do, that have some of evolution ahead of them. I think fear is a compass, whatever metaphor you want to use, for like guiding you in the directions that you should be leaning into. What do you think about that?
Yes. Well, let's think about it from a historical standpoint. Fear was a useful tool to not be eaten and to not be exorcised from your tribe. Those two things. You didn't want to get kicked out and be alone because your survival chances went to almost zero. And you also didn't want to do something that would put you in a dangerous situation with a predator or perhaps taking too much risk to fall and die, etc. So it was a survival instinct. And then, if right at the very end of the time period of humanity, which is just a blip, fear became something else, became something that we were forced to live with that was irrational because it didn't hold any value for those survival instincts anymore. I think there's still probably some social aspects that are still true, but maybe not when you consider it in the context of social media and the internet. If it's in person to person talking, it's very rare that you would get the same fear response as you would from something on the internet, I would say. So I think fear shifted goals. It went from survival into like a chronic irrationality that holds no purpose, but it's only existing because of that original primal element. So now we're trying to redefine it at the moment, I would say.
Yeah. It's like at its root, it's a biological phenomenon, not phenomenon, I don't know if that's the right way, a response. It's a system that's built where you have fight or flight, for example, and norepinephrine starts to go through your bloodstream and all of those things when you get afraid of your life for various reasons. But in the modern world, you're not typically in situations where you're worried about dying, yet we still feel fear. And understanding what you're afraid of and why we still feel those things and like wrestling with it and trying to define it, I think is where I want to like soak in today's episode, because I think there's a lot there. Where are you at on your fear journey? do you feel like, I'm assuming you've conquered a lot of fears in your life, but you probably still have some. How do you hold the concept of still being afraid of things while also realizing that it's all completely irrational?
The unfortunate truth is the more extreme fears you have to deal with and live through, the easier it gets to deal with fear. I wish that wasn't the case, because that means that people have to suffer in order to evade fear, I would say. I haven't met many people that haven't gone through extreme trauma that have sort of conquered fear. So for me, it was the same thing. Like, I've gone through extreme fears to the point of like laying on the ground with no motivation to get up ever again and do anything, and feeling pain and helplessness at moments, and then getting back up off that horse, and then feeling different forms of fear, because there are many kinds of fear. There's a survivalist fear, there's a social fear, there's a judgment fear, there's fear from self you could possibly even have. Like, maybe you fear something about yourself. I don't know. There's so many different aspects. And I had to go through many deep trenches of fear, and then get back up on the other side and realize they weren't as extreme as I thought. Or maybe they were. Sometimes maybe they even were. Like, having extreme loss in life can really be a concrete, extreme situation and fear that you feel it to your depths. There's no way out of it. Like, if you lose someone close to you, for example, your life changes. And that is a fear that becomes realized. You know it's coming, but you'll still fear it. Because part of you is being lost in that moment as well. And the more of those ups and downs, whatever causes them, the deeper the trenches go, the easier it gets to deal with fear. And now I'm on my journey. I'm like, I have very few fears that strike me to my core, if any. I don't even think I have any anymore. Like, there were many that have.
That's amazing.
But
right.
I think
you have to get through them.
I'm so nonchalant about it, because I know, and like, it's not a big deal. Like, even if something terrible happened, like, I'm not gonna change the outcome, because I know already I'm such a machine at trying to change outcomes. Like, I'm super driven and intellectually present in everything that I'm doing. Like, any extra level of that is just causing me unnecessary anxiety. So there's no point. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. What I'm fascinated by, and what I'm hoping we can deliver throughout the episode, is the concept of like actually getting over the fear. And it seems like you're kind of leaning into it right now in the words you're saying, like the mindset that you've put yourself in and the tools that you've cultivated to be where you're at, and the realizations like that have come from conquering fear. But when you're on the anticipatory side of fear, before you've conquered it, especially when it's one of your first fears, that, true raw terror to certain levels, like, how do you actually get over that? What is that process like? I don't know if you want to share a story of a fear that you've conquered in the past, like when you're younger. Obviously, as you get older, it gets easier. The more fears you've conquered, the easier it gets, like you're saying. But can you put yourself back in your early shoes, in your earlier years? What was that like to get?
Honestly, that's the honest answer is I just had to live through it some of the time. I've had fears that were present fully for like a year. I remember when I broke up with my girlfriend when I was 18, and I like mourned that relationship for an entire year. It was way too extreme. Okay, it was irrationally extreme, right? And then I've had other situations where everything just hits so hard at once, there's nowhere to go. So you just have to keep going because there's no other way forward. Like, it just happens, and then you're on the other side. And I think that is almost like a forced reckoning, is the way to reshape your mind. That's when you have the situation where there's chemicals and connections in your brain that are rewiring. Like, when those extreme traumas hit, your brain is rewiring itself. It's like, something is wrong, so extremely wrong that we need to figure out a new model of reality. Is basically what's happening. So you come out the other side, no matter what, you're going to be wired up differently. Like, I mean, that would you say that's probably a description of what happened in your situation when you had your near-death experience, or what do you think?
Yeah. Now that you're saying it and the way you're saying it, we're getting like really into the moment of fear, into the visceral experience. Like when I think, because a lot of times we try to avoid it and certain fears become unavoidable, and sometimes they come at you way faster than you realize, and maybe you weren't even aware that you were afraid of these types of things in the first place. And then they hit you and you can't go anywhere. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Like your body's having a response. You're in the situation that you're in. And obviously there's lots of nuance to everything I'm saying right now. There are probably certain situations that you can start to modify what you're doing and change things. But in the worst case scenario, like where your fear is realized, you're experiencing it, and there's truly nothing you can do about it, well, there's nothing to do about it. You're just keep going. Time continues to move forward, and you're going through that experience feeling, I don't know, maybe it's fight or flight, maybe it's super anxious feeling, maybe your heart's racing or palpitating, and you're constantly worried and having panic attacks and feeling like you're on the edge of like dying in worst case scenarios. And then the next second comes. What are your thoughts?
Yes. There is one thing you can do. There is one thing. The only thing, I would say. You choose to be brave or not. That bravery will decide how you'll get out of the situation and what way you'll get out. As in, what mindset will you have when you get out? Where will your happiness levels be in the future moving forward? And how will this event affect you in future recognition of it? Those things will be affected by how you approach your bravery in the moment, and also how you decide to take ownership for whatever is happening. Maybe it's completely out of your control. You have nothing to do with it, but you have the choice to keep a cool mind and do your best to move forward and to be positive and to take care of those around you in that situation, and not try to find a good balance of asking for help, but also not putting anybody else in a worse situation than you are, if that is applicable to whatever is happening. Like there are elements where your personal bravery come into play, and I think asking for help is important. If you're in a tough situation, ask for help. I'm definitely not saying that. I think asking for help is crucial. Yes. But like your own personal mindset might feel impossible for you to be positive. It might feel impossible that you're even going to get out of the situation, but you will get out if you choose to persevere. If you choose to see a brighter element of the future, see a brighter you, maybe you need to change. Maybe that outcome is you seeing a tough reality of who you need to become, and being brave to get there is part of that journey. So
yes,
I think being brave is the thing you can do or not.
Yeah, that's really a good point. I would say in moments of fear that I reflect on while I'm speaking, it's around maybe like the physicalness of it. Like sometimes you can't materially change things around you to stop fear from occurring. And sometimes your body is going to have a response that you can't necessarily control in that moment because it's so overwhelming. But you can control how you respond to that.
Yeah.
Within time. Mm-hmm. And you get to choose how you frame that experience for yourself and weave that occurrence of fear into your overall personal narrative. And that's going to dictate how it impacts you and changes you for the future and who you become on the other side of that. And I think that is like the most crucial thing you need to be cognizant of once you have the mental clarity and capacity to even take that on. Because when stuff's really happening, sometimes your brain's just freaking out. But as soon as you feel like you can grab on to how am I framing this to myself, what does this mean to me in my story? Answering those questions in a way that's going to strengthen you and set you up for a richer, more stronger, resilient existence on the other side of it is going to be the better thing to do, as opposed to playing the victim or something along those lines where you just feel completely powerless in the face of this overwhelming fear. And then you end up feeling like maybe you didn't really conquer it, even though you went through it. You did it, right? And so then you're just continue to be beat down by the narrative that you tell yourself after it. Typically, I think fear, sometimes they do continue to drag on, but that's typically because of where you're at in your mental state. Going back to your example around a relationship, like the relationship ended in an instant, give or take, right? But you let it drag on for a year within your mind because of how you framed that occurrence, that thing happening to yourself. And like, would you agree?
Yes and no. I think that there is, like, the framing is important. I do agree with that. There are certain things that you kind of have to experience in order to gain wisdom from. So, like, when that happened to me, I was young and I hadn't had a real serious relationship before that. So it just felt like the entire world fell apart because it was the most I had known of, like, love from a partner.
Yes.
So there was a different understanding of how the world worked for the first time. And I had, like, gotten a taste of something and I couldn't comprehend how to deal with that loss because it felt like, I guess, some self-understanding, like, was broken. It was almost like the love for myself had been shaken because I didn't understand why someone wouldn't love me after that situation. Like, I'm just saying there are extra things kind of built up in here, and it kind of also depends on the experience of the person at hand. You can't blame everything on mindset, but it is helpful to have that as a secondary element. Like, the more that you can utilize that mindset, the more that you can understand it, the better. But there's always going to be a first time you experience something, and it will affect you in a certain way. It's just important to be delicate around these kind of conversations because you don't want to put blame on someone who's having a reaction to something, because the reaction is not the fault. It's like, you do the best in the situation. It's the difference between deciding to give up or not. Like, for example, at one point I was sliding down the side of an arch in Moab, Utah, like, with loose sandstone. They closed it now because some people have died on this arch, but we were going up it. My friend was an experienced climber and he didn't top rope us. I was, like, somewhat experienced, but not that much. So, like, I look down, I see death 1,000 feet below. I look up, I see the top of this arch, and, like, I'm sliding in the moment, and I'm thinking survival, but also my life is starting to flash. Like, memories are coming. So I know that this is, like, the dire moment. When you have memories and people flashing in your mind, like, you're at the peak of life. Like, that's there's nothing about that. I'm even, like, getting emotional thinking about it because it was really intense. But I decided I'm not gonna die now from a lack of effort. Like, if I'm going to make it through this, is what I decided in that instant. And then, like, hugged full friction and just slowed myself down just from the friction of my body, got to a point, and then decided, like, I'm going to strategically scramble and I'm only looking up to where I'm going. There's no looking back anymore. And then I move forward through that. Now, that might be a nice metaphor for somebody who's going through a different kind of situation, but I think it still holds true. Like, so many things were out of my control, but I decided I was going to put in every effort possible and make it through that situation. And then I did, instead of being hopeless or, like, freaking out and not controlling my mind in the moment, if such a thing can be said. I don't know.
It's tough. It's interesting you described it that way, because my near-death experience was at a certain rate out of my control. Like, you had in your moment, you were like, I'm not going to die due to a lack of effort. And I think that's a very potent, specific, real-time way of power, like to be able to control it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I was in the situation I was in because internal parts of my body stopped functioning properly. And there was no amount of like material will that I could just be like, organs start working again, right? At least not to my knowledge. I didn't know how to. not very quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
You had the will to keep living though, right? Like you
Yes.
weren't ready to give up and be hopeless.
Yes, I wasn't like I'm ready. I'm dying. Like this is it. This is over. Like I'm going. I don't know. In moments, I didn't necessarily say I'm going to live tomorrow because I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to, but I did say like I'm going to live right now and live today and live in this moment. And even if it's like I'm having a panic attack in the moment, at least I have this moment. And I was like able to, I couldn't look beyond the current moment. Like every single second was the only thing I could focus on. But it's also the only thing I ever wanted to focus on, because when you're in those moments and you don't know at any point, oh, like I go into failure and, you know, I end up dying at any second, potentially, you just cling to the present. You cling to what's happening right then and there. Especially, I think maybe subconsciously my mind's looking for things like, what can I find? What can I do? Like I'm trying to claw and clamor my way out of the situation, but I couldn't, right? It was just about going through it, sitting through it. But like you're saying, having that will and to continue to be alive, at least for the next second. Like it was in that type of time scale. Like I can be alive for one more second. And I just kept repeating that over and over and over again. And so I had that will to continue to observe the world and see it around me and to experience what living is like, you know, viscerally.
Yeah, there's something to be said.
And I think that got me through. Go for it. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. I was like, there's something to be said for just not being defeatist and also not letting yourself feel like whatever judgment or direness to the situation is at hand is the outcome. That is, I guess, what bravery is seeing past what's being presented to you, your mind, and then realizing that it's not the truth of the future. The future doesn't exist yet. So
yes,
there's a lot of narratives that are thrown at you in the moment that are not accurate or can't be.
Yes, your mind has to make things up very rapidly, I think, to like explain things, especially when it's something that's so foreign to you and you've never experienced it before. And that's typically a lot of things that people fear. So, and you can't always help that, but I think over time you can start to better understand it, which is, I think, a beautiful segue into something I really want to share with people, because through my experience of nearly dying and getting through that, there was a lot of secondary ripples throughout my life in the way I looked at myself, my values, what I chose to spend time doing, how I wanted to live my life. It brought a lot of clarity to myself and situation. Like I was able to step outside of myself, see it from a third person perspective, and be like, what am I doing with my life? And really ask the more existential questions of how I'm choosing to live, from, you know, why I choose to use like, you know, X, Y, or Z, like within the kitchen, like different food ingredients, to why do I wear the clothes I wear? Like I questioned everything. And the reason is because I think I wanted to make sure that I wasn't afraid of anything else. Like getting down to the root of why I do what I do, because people can be afraid of one thing, but actually be afraid of another. And as I went through that process, I just started to realize like, oh, there's a deeper thing here. There's something deeper going on. And I had to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And I wanted to just, exactly. Like it's a very therapeutic thing. But the main point is that you can be afraid of something, but and it's one thing if it's like life-threatening type of fear, but if it's the typical types of fears that you're afraid of in modern life, there's typically deeper rooted reasons why you're afraid of that thing that maybe you're not even aware of unless you start to ask the questions. And so I wanted to share just this evolution of asking the question of why. So you're afraid of something. Why? Why are you afraid of it? And you have to answer it. And it can be very difficult to answer it. And then you're going to answer it and you're going to ask why again. And you keep going down the levels. So here's an example. I am afraid of giving a presentation at work. Why? Because I'm afraid that my work won't be good enough and I'm going to mess up. Why? Because I'm afraid that if my work isn't good enough, or if I mess it up, it may lead to me not getting promoted as soon, or worse, getting fired. Why? Because I'm afraid that if I get fired or don't get promoted, I won't be able to maintain my current lifestyle with a fancy home and an expensive car, and so on. Why? Because I'm afraid that if I don't have a nice car and home, then people will think I am less than and not want to hang out with me. Why? Because I am afraid that I will not be loved and I will be lonely. Why? Because I'm afraid that the real me is not lovable, that I am not enough without worldly riches. Why? Because I do not love myself. I do not think that I am enough intrinsically. I have so many flaws if only people knew. I need these other things in life to validate my value as a person. If I can't produce value for others and achieve material success, what am I here for? I may as well not exist. And why do you think that? Well, maybe it's because my parents never showed affection towards me growing up. They did, but it was only when I successfully completed the chores or got a good grade in school that they gave me a hug. I can't recall one time they said I love you or took me out for ice cream just because. But if they did, maybe I would have realized that I am worth existing solely because I do. Because I am lucky to be alive and it is beautiful. And how amazing is it to not worry about seeking validation constantly and to feel fully at home and accepted and free to just be and eat ice cream. To observe and enjoy the miraculous thing we call life. I am life. I am alive. I am in a body that I can't even comprehend how it works. So many trillions of processes occurring in me right this second to allow me to even be aware of the sunshine hitting my skin. I am a miracle by all accounts. How can I not love me, whatever I am? I am fascinated by me and all its mysteries. How can I not feel a powerful desire to nurture this beautiful body, this powerful one, and soul, so that I may continue to enjoy the beauty of my chance to be aware of myself and the cosmos? On second thought, I think I do. I think I do love me. And that's enough. So that goes like from being afraid to give a presentation at work to having this existential thought about life and love. And I wouldn't say that's the same path for every fear. It's just one example of a path that could be much more deeply rooted into why you might be doing a particular thing or afraid of something that's a bit more surface level. And then when you start to ask why, like I did, you can start to rewire the narrative, and you need to get down to those more fundamental understandings of how you feel in the deeper subconscious structures that are within you that control even the thoughts you have to think and so forth. And so I encourage people to ask why whenever you feel like you're afraid. Do you have anything to share around that?
Yes. Although it's slightly off topic, but it's more just adjacent. Which is, I think the work of Robert Sapolsky is very relevant here. For anyone who doesn't know, Robert Sapolsky, he's a Stanford researcher, professor, and he studies fear and neuroscience in the realm of reactions and causality. And he has a point of view that everything, in a way, unravels itself as it will. And people, a lot of the time, or most of the time, are set up in their thought patterns and their ways of life from childhood and their environment and the conditions they had to be evolving inside of through youth, perhaps onward. And there isn't a reason to judge anyone for doing anything. They're simply in their own reactionary pathway. And because of this, it's important to remember that for yourself as well and for others. It really, for me, that mindset lifted me in a lot of ways because it helped me see that not only for me, but for everyone in my environment, we're all just living the way that our path has led us to live, finding our realizations as we go. The less judgment we place on ourselves, the less judgment other people place on us, the easier it gets. And I think your structure of whys is just almost like an envelope shell of that. You're like seeing what's caused this, what's actually digging into the layer of that. And the reasons are not a place of judgment. The reasons are just a place of realization. So you get to those realizations and then you can move on from them. It's just, I think if you just see the realization, it's easy to change it. Once you get past the reaction and you get to the realization, then it's much easier to grasp it, to confront it, to live with it, and then to see if it's useful or not anymore. And once you have that held in front of you and you say, like, this isn't useful for me anymore, or I see how this has not been useful for most situations or hasn't been helpful for my self-love, or maybe somebody else is carrying something, but they don't see what they're carrying and it's affecting me in a negative way. Well, I see that they're carrying that. I don't need to treat it as if it's like a poison in my body. Perhaps it's just something that exists that they can't see. You can point it out to them or not. Maybe they'll never see it. But if you know that it's there, you don't have to let it affect you. So that's what I would say. Like, these questions are important, but they're also only part of the path to understanding. And the full path involves getting out these things to confront them and see them and then realizing if they're useful or not. I think that's where the growth comes in. And like the whys are the path to some of those.
It's just like, it's just this first step of awareness. Like, make sure you really feel like you have an understanding of what's going on. Like, it's hard to make changes or evaluate if something is worth still keeping as part of your internal compass and like just, foundational way of living life if you aren't aware of those structures that make it up. And so being curious about yourself and the world around you, why you do certain things always, but particularly when you're afraid, I think is a good practice.
Yes. And also in the reverse of fear, if you get angry a lot, it's probably because you're fearful of something. Control is a big thing that people are fearful of that causes anger and lash out. And there's something to be said there.
Jordan.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it. I was going to ask you what you're afraid of. I want to know what you're afraid of.
Oh, good. I was segueing in the same way. I wanted to talk about irrational fears, but I also want to do this exercise from game that I designed where we say, what would happen if we're going to express some things we're afraid of now, because we say, what would happen if, and then we say something we're afraid of doing or happening or exploring. And then we say what we think would happen if we actually did it. I think this is a good way to confront fears, and it's really helpful to do it in a group setting. Usually you would play this game in a private group, and what happens there happens there. It's just like group therapy in any kind of setting, intervention kind of a thing, but it's for fun and it's not so serious. So do you want to take
I think I think it just kind of relaxes you a bit into being okay with like wrestling with your fears. Like it doesn't become this big thing anymore. You kind of softens it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I am glad to say that everything that I am afraid of, at least that I am consciously aware that I'm afraid of, I am working on actively, and I am confronting it on, if not a daily basis, a weekly basis. And so I'm going to share things that are real time, like what I'm afraid of, but I am working on them because I have done some of these like what if exercises before internally. And when you really think about it, but it's one thing to do the exercise and then another thing to like actually apply what you learn and actually do it, because you have to like commit to like the realizations that you've maybe come to. So I am afraid to start a company. And I think if I started a company, which I have, great.
Boom. We need to go on.
Fear knocked out. But there's a long road ahead. But if I started a company, I think I would be able to work with brilliant individuals that can help us fulfill a particular mission that I would consider to make the world a better place, a healthier place, a world full of love and joy, more love and joy in people's lives. And I could impact people and help them live more rich existences through the messages we share and through the products that we can create to help them do that. And that's a really cool concept. I think I would feel a lot of fulfillment in that. On the other side, if I started a company, I could also fail to do that. I could fail at realizing the potential that I see by going through this and putting all this effort in. And if I were to fail, I would feel like I let myself down, that I've wasted time, that I potentially end up dying, wasting the life that I've been given.
No such thing. Do you catch up? Can I say?
At a certain level. I know that, right? But I'm going to keep going. Let me keep going. But when I keep thinking about it, I think it's easy to end at like that type of conclusion and then be stuck and feel like powerless. But I would rather fail, I think, because if the real root here is that I don't want to waste time, what I think I'm most afraid of is seeing potential in things and then not realizing them, not being the person I needed to be to make the most of the situation, to not show up, to like get up. And in those moments, let's say I did get up, then I would keep going. Like I would just keep trying. I would, and then I'd mess up again. And then if I messed up again, I'd just mess up again and keep going until there's either success or I die trying to do something, right? Like I would rather die trying. I would rather die living in trying to fulfill a mission, or just to move the needle ever so slightly in a direction that I want to see the world go, than to not be trying at all and just wasting my days. Like in both scenarios, let's say like I don't accomplish anything, and this is again like super worst case. I would I at least in one scenario I had a chance to. And that would have meant I did more with my life than I ever would have if I would have never tried. So even if this company doesn't exist, like if it were to fail, I don't think it would be a failure of me per se, like at an existential level, because I would just keep going. Like I don't think maybe I mess up, but I can try again. But at the same time, maybe it didn't fail because of me at all, and it failed because it wasn't the right product or the right time. There's a lot of luck, I think, that gets involved in company creation.
No such thing.
No such thing as what?
Those last two things. No such thing as the wrong product. No such thing as the wrong time. I think these are all stupid constructs that are built by society. But I do want to say something quickly about the framework of where your fear is living. It's a very normal fear. I had an epiphany some years ago that even the idea of a company, the idea of work, the idea of sustainability and self-growth, however you want to frame it, there's so many ideas about like what you need to be to have worth and for things to make sense for what you're doing. None of that actually exists. It's all just made up. The only thing that really matters is, are you enjoying what you're doing? Because who cares if you're getting paid a ton of money for it or not, or if it gets people to tell you they like you or not, or XYZ label comes from it and then you get that on your business card or your resume, you can put it on your LinkedIn. Like none of that is you. None of that affects you on a day-to-day basis. If you're enjoying what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, you could be living off the grid, growing your own vegetables, have a dog, and be happier than any other life you'd have living to work in a job or like starting a company or doing whatever. There's the only person that defines what's worth for you is you. And all of these constructs that you're talking about now, the right time, the right product, the right existence, the right outcome, like none of that stuff is real. Even if we made a product and quote unquote nobody liked it but us, which is impossible, because if one human likes something, another one will. I guarantee that to be true. But even if that were true, it was still worth it because we liked what we made and we got to use it. Like that was worth it, you know?
Right.
So all of these things are, and I know you know this, that these are rational things. I'm not saying I like it. You don't get it. I'm not saying that, but
I also get what I'm saying too.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to make a point of is that all of these external constructs exist, and you need to see not just past them, but through them. They're not real. They're just smoke. They're just some ether that you've built up as a physical object that isn't real.
Yeah. It's a story. It's a narrative. And I think going back into it, it's like that's what I think what I'm ultimately saying is around like I know what I find fulfilling through experience. I know that I enjoy creating things, and maybe those things make other people's lives better, maybe they don't, but I know I'm going to enjoy my day more when I tap into my creative energy. And I do that, and that process is what I love. I enjoy it. It gives me so much vitality. And I know that if I were to imagine, and I can only ever predict, but if I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking back on my life and I see it, whether or not the things I create make other people's lives better, I know that I had one hell of a ride, that I enjoyed it, that I created so much stuff that I found beautiful and made my life richer and more fulfilling in so many ways because I chose to do those things instead of just wasting away doing the same things day after day and not creating things, but just merely consuming. So that's for me what in my life, what I've learned, I think makes me the most happiest is in that creation. So whatever the byproduct of it is, I don't need to attach my value to it, but rather understand that like I'm going about my days and I'm doing what I'm doing for the clear doing it.
yes, there's a clear takeaway here, which I think maybe we should
Go for it.
outline in a big stamp, because I'm going to stamp this. If I edit this podcast, I'm going to stamp it up. Which is, at the end of the day, you can reflect on if you've enjoyed what you were doing or not. That should be the value judgment of if you're living a good life or not. Boom. That's it. Not, did this thing I did today bring in X, Y, or Z? Did it make this other thing happen? Did it blah, 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 external stuff? No. Did the thing I did today bring me joy? Did it bring me happiness and fulfillment? Did I feel invigorated to do it? If the answer is yes, you're good. Ding. There we go. Thumbs up. Let's go.
I agree. We're all set.
For example, like today, I made 7 handmade games. Then I made a Mad Lib for them and everything. I do this every month. There's like very few people that are subscribed to my game service right now. They pay $20 and I hand make a game for them. I hand make a stamp and stamp it, and I like go through all this effort, put a component in there. I made it for 7 people, which, I mean, in that and of itself would be considered successful to some people and terrible to others. Who knows? It's all subjective, but
it's all relative. Yep.
Yeah. But the point is, like, I didn't make much money, but I enjoyed doing it a lot. And I feel good about spending my time doing that because it was very, very nice. And the outcome was like, I get to send this thing off, this beautiful creation, and somebody will enjoy it somewhere. Cool. It was great. I spent the day doing something that I found fulfilling. It was a good day.
Yeah. Like I would consider that as a form of self-love. Like when you're loving yourself, figure out what that means to you. But like love yourself daily. And I don't know, at least for me, I think that kind of mitigates a lot of fears that I build up in my mind. What about you? Your turn. What if?
Oh, are we doing that? It's bad.
Oh, did you have one? If you had one, we could do it. But if we're getting to the same realizations, I don't know.
No, we didn't set it up exactly the same way, so I didn't realize we were doing it. But let's think. I did want to just do it on the fly because I think it's important to take on these things. So what would happen if, I think for me, it would be, what would happen if I committed to building a house in Japan, like being there for a long enough period of time and making sacrifices to make it happen. And I'm afraid to do it because I've tried, I've gotten close, but there's been really big barriers in the way every time. And then one time I was the closest, I wasn't there. And if I was there, I probably would have been able to do it. Like, so circumstances have just, for whatever reason, not worked out every time. And it's been like over 10 years, it's been 12 years since I first went that I've been wanting to do it. And I've been learning Japanese off and on the whole time. And like, I know pretty well. I have a bachelor's degree in Japanese and I've made lots of friends there and I love being there, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out to build a house there. And it's like a life goal, but it feels now like a big pressure or something that can't happen because it just won't happen. But I think it will happen. It's just a what would happen if situation where I need to commit and decide that's my sole purpose for like a year or two. And
what would happen if you didn't build the home?
If I didn't?
Yeah. What if you die never doing that?
Well, I think the specifics of that happening don't need to happen in a certain way, but there is some calling that is like telling me I need to somehow get it at some point, even if I'm 50, like even if I'm 80, I don't know. There's just, I just know that if I'm alive, I'm going to try to do it at some point. Like when the time is right, or like if something lines up to make it happen, I'm going to do it. So I guess it's not a matter of like what wouldn't happen. It's just a matter of if I like died prematurely or the situation never came up, like cool. That was whatever happened. I'm not saying like I'm not fulfilled as a person if I don't do it. There's no
Right.
higher dangling thing, but it is something I've already decided that is going to happen at some point in time. And there have been several things that I've decided are going to happen at some point in time, and the other things have all happened. So it seems that if I put something of such importance on the front list of like sometime priorities, if that what a ridiculous thing to say, but
Why hasn't it happened yet?
basically it's just been because of money and or time against the money. Like when I haven't had the money, I haven't had the ability to do it because of the money. And then when I have, for brief amounts of time, had the money, I didn't have the time and the focus able to do it because of other things I was working on or other situations I was in. And so those two things flipped like 2 times. And then now I'm just back in the situation where because I don't have the money, I also don't have the time because I need to turn the time into the money first.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yep. Math. Yeah, that's tough. If I know you, assuming you don't get hit by a bus or die prematurely in any other catastrophic way, I see me ringing that doorbell in Japan.
Yeah.
If you got
It'll happen someday.
Maybe it'll be an actual bell. We'll see. That'd be cool. Anyway, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Where do we want to take this? Where are you feeling inspired to go?
Okay, I do want to talk about one more thing. One thing I think is so important. The most important thing about fear, the most important is confronting and getting over them after you identify them. I forgot to bring in my notebook with all my fears. That was like the thing I was going to talk about, so I'm just going to wing it. But I was like, what do you want to do? Ask yourself, what do you want to do? What are you afraid of trying? Like, what's so curious about life that you really like are afraid to tell anybody about, but you know you actually want to do it? Write down on a piece of paper. Just start small. Like, get it out of your mind. Get it out of the rumination. Like, put it physically somewhere, and then burn the paper if you want to. Do whatever you need to do, but get your ideas, your curiosities, your deep thoughts out into the world in some way, and then they'll start to manifest themselves. And then take steps towards those little ones and make sure that you're thinking about identifying those. And the reason why it will make a difference, at least, and I'm going to talk from my personal experience, it has changed the way that I get to live my life, because every little fear I've overcome has changed the trajectory of my life immensely. And the big fears I've overcome have made huge impacts on my life. I mean, there was points, like when you're an entrepreneur, you understand that there are points when you're just going to struggle and you have to decide if you're going to give up or not. And like when I was first starting businesses and like I could barely afford food and rent, and it was everybody wants you to give up. Like everybody that I knew was like, go get a job, like stop trying to do this. It's not going to work, obviously. Like you can't do it. Like family, friends, whoever. And there's this internal pull inside of me that said like, no, I'm going to do it. And I don't care if every person on this planet says I can't do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to at least try to do it or die trying. Like I just know I want to do it. Like I enjoy spending my time on this so much that I'll make a huge sacrifice of like letting other things kind of fly by while I figure it out until I get somewhere. And then I did get somewhere. And then from that point on, it was like this depth of knowledge grew. And then, you know, things get easier and you have an understanding, and then everybody believes in you because you show that you can do it. It's just, I feel like you can apply that to every rational thing, every rational curiosity you have. Like you can just decide that it's for you to discover. And as long as you're not like hurting somebody to discover it, then like go, if you want to discover it, go discover it. And you decide if it's worth it or not. And you decide if you can do it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that. What are your thoughts on that process?
I completely agree. I think the things that you are afraid of, for me, the things in my life that I've been most afraid of are the things that are typically things that I want the most, that I'm eager or curious about the most, the things that draw me near. They're the things that I know deep down are going to turn my life into something new in some way. It's going to make me change shape. And there's something that can be discomforting about that in the moment. I think it's the anticipation of it. But in every moment that I've faced my fears, I have turned into somebody that I love. And my life has become that much more vibrant and rich. And I was able to look back and see that I did this thing that I was scared of doing. And I like who I am because I did that. And I feel like I'm living a more authentic life because I did that. Like I said at the beginning, I think it's a mirror, and or it's a compass. It's when you're aware of the things, for the most part, the things that you're in this vein, like the things that you're afraid of, that when it comes to like realizing aspirations or following your curiosity, creating things, going on a trip, going somewhere new, traveling, putting yourself into situations that you haven't experienced before, in front of people that you've never experienced before. Like, do it once. Start small if you have to. But like that, once you do it, it builds confidence. But I also will say that fear can be a finicky thing. And even if you do it once or twice or 5 times in a row, sometimes it takes a while for your subconscious to like really develop that really mature confidence so you can continue to do it without having to, without it feeling so overwhelming each and every time. For example, like public speaking. I am still kind of afraid of public speaking. And I know public speakers that have been doing it for 20 years and they're still afraid of public speaking to a point. But it's not this paralyzing fear. It's just that they care, right? Fear can be this tool that you can use as a motivating energy to show up in the best way possible. It's just, it's more like an excitement within you. So
you want to grow.
Yeah.
You gotta lean into it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So using it as a energy for positive movement instead of like being paralyzed by it.
Yeah. It's been shown in studies that people that take fear on as a challenge instead of as a debilitating barrier are the ones that grow and are happier. So there you go. Every time you have a fear, you just think, oh, that's a challenge. Can I overcome that fear or not? That's the question.
Yeah. That's the answer. I think that's good. Fireworks. Yes. Let's go. All right. Face your fears in 2024. I know I am. I'm excited.
Don't lay in a weird position in the bathroom and figure it out. You'll feel better.
All right. As always, thanks for listening.